Good evening and welcome. Welcome to the University of San Francisco, a wonderful community of educators and learners who are striving to be people for others and to embody a faith that does justice. My name is Chinyere Opara. I'm the Provost and Vice President of Academic Affairs here at the university. And it's my great pleasure to welcome you to the second annual Alvin H. Baum Jr. Memorial Lecture hosted by the SWIG Program in Jewish Studies and Social Justice. Tonight we come together to remember those who have come before us and those who are still here with us, elders in the work of Tikkun Olam, repairing the world. The annual Alvin Baum Jr. Memorial Lecture focuses on repairing the damage of religious-based homophobia and transphobia. And of course, we all know that this couldn't come at a more important time as we see the rise of banning of books, particularly texts that focus on humanizing LGBTQ individuals and creating a better understanding of genders and sexualities. In fact, last year, we had more banned books in 2022 than ever before. So this is an important time for us to elevate this kind of dialogue and conversation. This lecture celebrates those whose LGBTQ plus Jewish social justice activism has transformed our lives and made new ways of living and loving possible. Tonight, we honor one of the great change makers in San Francisco and California history, Senator Mark Leno. Yes. Very exciting. Tonight is a celebration of courage and of opening doors. As the first openly gay Jew in many of the spaces in which he entered, Alvin Baum created space for other LGBTQ individuals and organizations to thrive. And of course, tonight's speaker, Mark Leno, was the first openly gay man elected to the state senate. As the first black female provost at a Jesuit university, and as the first black female openly queer provost at a Jesuit university, I understand the journey they're going on. And I'm incredibly grateful to those who stood strong in their identity and their authenticity and boldly opened up the door for people like myself to also stand in our own authenticity. Of course, this evening wouldn't be possible without the support of many of you here. And in particular, I want to call out somebody who has been a staunch supporter of me in the year and a half since I joined the University of San Francisco, Rabbi Camille. Rabbi Camille, our beloved rabbi in residence. Rabbi Camille has built an incredible community here. Just this week, she invited me to sit in space with Breaking Bread and the Binary, an incredible community of students who are exploring, some of the students there, wave if you're part of that group, yes, who are exploring what it means to be queer, to be exploring genders and sexualities, and also to be deeply interested in questions of faith and meaning and purpose. And it was such a beautiful space where there was incredible authenticity, honesty, and openness. And I could really sense Rabbi Camille's leadership in that space, creating a space where students could really be themselves. And I think that I'm seeing some nods in the back row. I think I've captured that sense. Rabbi Camille also teaches an incredible community-engaged learning course here at the university called Queering Religion and Honoring Our LGBTQ plus Elders. And in that course, some of you have actually been in that classroom. Elders, activists from across San Francisco and the Bay Area come and engage in community with our own students. And so there's this real intergenerational connection and exchange, which is so powerful. She also organizes an off-site retreat called Spectrum and is coordinating a 3-day conference for LGBTQ students from across the Jesuit university system. This is real change making. This is really transforming what it means to be able to go to a Jesuit Catholic institution like the University of San Francisco and be truly authentically who you are and to be embraced and affirmed for that. And it's part of this work. Yes, let's hear it. And I can truly say that I don't think that I would have had such a warm welcome had it not been for this foundational work that's been happening over many years. In fact, when I was first invited, many people said to me, Chinyere, there's this position at the University of San Francisco, and we've read the description, it just sounds like you. It's about somebody who's an intellectual and an activist. It's about somebody who leads with the head and the heart. It's about somebody who believes in social justice and who believes in inquiry and science and is also deeply driven by faith, you should apply. And I said, well, yes, but it's Catholic. Do they really want me? You know, I'm very queer and I'm very out. And there's other identities stacked on that too. And they said, just go have that conversation. And immediately I found that this is an affirming and open community. And that doesn't happen by chance. That happens by work, and that happens by courage, and certainly by some of you in this room, and by our very own rabbi in residence. So I'm very deeply grateful for that. I'd also like to name some other names, and I can't get through everybody, so I apologize if I don't name you. But some of the people who've really been foundational in supporting both Rabbi Camille's leadership and also this program have been. I'm so grateful that you're here today, Pam David, and her late wife, Cheryl Lazar. So we'd like to just acknowledge you and honor you. Also in the front row, Robert, we're so grateful that you're here today. And of course, Robert's beloved husband.
I'm grateful you're here.
Oh, thank you, thank you. You're passing the baton, huh? And everybody here who supported the SWIG program in Jewish Studies and Social Justice. I'm just grateful for your generosity. I'm grateful for your steadfastness as you stand by those of us who are doing the work. And I'm grateful for your vision, because we are all, to a certain extent, passing the baton to the back row here, to the students. So thank you, all of you. And so I'm going to pass it over to Rabbi Camille, who will lead us through the rest of the evening. Thank you.
We have been very fortunate to have you and be as very proud in your representation of all your identities, hidden and visible. And it was a particular gift to have you with our students at Breaking Bread this week, where we learned more about you, and hope you'll come back to have lunch with us frequently. Well, welcome. I'm so grateful to see so many friends that I haven't actually seen together in this room, maybe just like this, ever before. And I am grateful that we're able to fulfill this Jewish custom that on the anniversary of someone's death, and Al's anniversary of his Yortzeit's on Tuesday, that you gather to learn something of meaning that connects you to the spirit of that loved one. And I think it's awesome that we've created this lecture series that very intentionally brings us together to learn about social justice and the work that has been done and that we need to continue to do in honor of Al's memory and legacy. And we bring Cheryl into this space because were it not for the mystery of the Shekhinah, of that divine presence, bringing us together, Pam, at the moment of your portrait with Jeanette Marcy being unveiled, where I also met Mayor Agnos for the first time in person, and sort of having all of you together feels like a homecoming of a moment that we couldn't have known would led to this. So I feel the spirit of Al and the spirit of Cheryl here amongst us today. And what's different today than last year, we have this beautiful space, and more of you have come out and will be with us tonight at our main event. But we have with us this portrait that Barbara Winkelstein of blessed memory painted of Al. And this is a much younger, this is Al, I think, in his late 40s, perhaps. So I want to tell you a little story that I've had the responsibility and privilege over the last year of working with Robert to determine where Al's archives should go. And I'm pleased to tell you that they're at the University of California, Berkeley's Bancroft Library in the Western, it's called the Western Judaica edition of the Magnus Collection. And as Steve Shimmons can tell you, because he and I spent a great deal of time with the materials, what was in Al's archives? And I want to tell you that it was all about his relationships with the people who made a difference, with people he had gotten to know, projects he had come to support, and who he'd taken an interest in one way or another. And so his files were very organized, and they included like 1975 and all the correspondence of his encounters that year, or his 75th birthday and all of your birthday cards and notes. And when it comes to archiving, it was like, what is this that we're bequeathing? And the archives helped me understand that 100 years from now, when students try to understand what it was to be Jewish and gay in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, they'll look and see and tell stories about the kinds of relationships that one had to cultivate over decades in order to enter into boardrooms and become entrusted leaders in organizations that would not have us prior. And Al was that man who, as you said, Provost, who opened the way for us and made sure that he was not going to be the last Jewish gay strategic mind to come along. So when I was at the archives, at the storage making the transfer, there was this crated portrait. There was this crated huge picture. And we knew that there had been some art that we weren't ready to give away, we'd held on to, and some of it had gone into the storage. So we pulled this big piece out, and it was like, there was a post-it on it, and it said, "Seated Man." Now, anyone who knew art collection could imagine that it might be any number of seated men, but so we got it out, and Robert was like, "I think it's his portrait." And I thought, when you told me that, I started to imagine the beautiful portrait that hung in his living room. And but anyway, seated man. And when I think of Al, whether it was in his 40s, his 50s, his 60s, 70s, 80s, he was hardly ever sitting. He had such a robust, big life that only got bigger and more satisfying with you, Robert. And to think that in the box it would say "Man of Leisure." That was another tag was on it. One side was "Seated Man," and the other was "Man of Leisure." But the last thing I want to say is that this week a professor came into the Jewish Studies office, and he saw the portrait, and he didn't know Al, but he said, "What a beautiful, beautiful picture. Look at those hands, look at those jewels, look at that face, and look at the eyes." He said, "This is a man who had a twinkle in his eyes and a little mischief." And that's so true. And those of us who knew Al knew that we were part of the correspondence he kept dear to him, and some of the reasons his eyes twinkled. And it's a beautiful gift to feel connected to him in the spirit of this evening. So I want to introduce now Pam with a few more words, who will introduce our special guest. I was thinking, how do I describe how I met you? And really what I could come up with was this poem. It's not my poem, but I think you'll understand. It's attributed to Judah Halevi. I'm not sure about that, but that's who it's attributed to. "'Tis a fearful thing. 'Tis a fearful thing to love what death can touch. A fearful thing to love, to hope, to dream, to be and oh, to lose. A thing for fools this, and a holy thing to love. For your life has lived in me, your laugh once lifted me, your word was gift to me. To remember this brings painful joy. 'Tis a human thing, love, a holy thing to love what death has touched." And I would say that I've been so grateful that in your period of mourning, that one of the things you've done, I think maybe as part of your living, has been to be a old, wise lesbian teaching elder. Well, I'd like to call you an elder in my course, but that didn't work, so I had to call you a teaching elder. And then I heard this owl idea, old, wise lesbian. So, okay, I tried that out. In any case, for 2 years now, you've worked with our students and teaching them queer history. And so from the inside out, you get to see what a difference the work we're doing makes. So thank you for your ongoing support, and I invite you to join us up here.
Thank you, Rabbi. You were not supposed to make me cry. But I appreciate it, and thank you for bringing Cheryl into this room. So 2 things before I get to my former boss is, number one, how delighted that I'm here and that the provost is here and that all of you are here to celebrate Al and to celebrate this Rabbi in Residence program. I had known the rabbi about this much, but when I found out that my wife had cancer at the same time that my sister and my mother had cancer, I sank to the floor in my mother's house and said, whatever they say about God only gives you what you can handle is total BS. Because I could not handle it. And as a secular Jew, who never had a rabbi, never belonged to a synagogue, all I wanted was a rabbi. And it was just synchronicity that I'm at the opening of the Jeanette and Marcy part of Open House in front of this portrait that we both helped make happen. And there's the rabbi standing alone, and I'm just back from Chicago visiting my mom, who was fading, and with this terrible news that Cheryl was having to begin chemotherapy. And I walked over to her and I said, I need you. And she turned and said, I'm there. And she was there for the whole year, 2 years we had before Cher died, that she was with me when Cher died, and she's been with me ever since. So she is so much more. She's an incredible teacher, and I've been able to experience and see that, and it's true, I really had a little bit of a problem being called an elder, but I'm trying to get used to it. I used to be the precocious young one, and now I'm the elder, the wise elder, for whatever that means. But her role here, in some ways not being connected to a synagogue, I think has been freeing for her, and I'm so appreciative of it, because I had friends not Jewish who were part of the healing circles that we did for Cher and part of the Yahrzeit commemorations that we did, and who've said to me, I'm not Jewish, but will she be my rabbi? Including Robert. And her answer is yes. And this position at USF just reinforces that. She's the rabbi to the university. Not the only rabbi, I know, Erin, but one of them. And very grateful for her vision and her leadership and her ability to bring people together of all denominations. I think the future is interfaith. If you're going to be an organized religion, at least have it be interfaith, because it makes a difference. And now I want to turn to former mayor, but I still call him Mayor, Art Agnos. In 1987, in early 1987, my cousin just arrived. I'm glad she's here. I went to a little meeting with Art and some other lesbian leaders, Roma Guy, and I don't even remember who else was in the room, and it probably was 86, because Art was talking about he was going to run for mayor, and he wanted our support. And I said, great. But then I ran off to Washington, D.C. to organize the March on Washington for Lesbian and Gay Rights. and to become Reverend Jesse Jackson's primary advisor on lesbian and gay rights during his presidential campaign. When I got back to San Francisco, I'd been an organizer on lots of issues on both sides of the Bay, but all of a sudden had gotten this directive from Reverend Jackson, which he gave to all of his top staff, to get immersed in local Democratic Party politics and run for office or be in government. And I joined a campaign to build a new ballpark and was a field organizer and met Mayor Agnos, who had been elected by that time, and a lot of the staff around him. And after that was invited to join his administration as a special assistant to the mayor at the Mayor's Office of Community Development. And I began my work there in January 1990. And what I have to say about Art as the mayor is that it's criminal that he didn't get to serve a second term. Many of us were counting on that, and you just get started in your first term if you're a visionary mayor. And the strength and courage he showed to bring down the Embarcadero Freeway, and that and all the leadership he showed during and after the earthquake, the way he ran City Hall, where actually the left hand knew what the right hand was doing. I worked for 2 other mayors after Art. I can tell you it wasn't the same. There was a functional mayor, and then there was a dysfunctional mayor, and then there was a strong mayor, but honestly with Willie, there was the good Willie, and there was the evil Willie, and you never quite knew which day it was going to be. With Art, you knew where you were. You knew what your role was as a staff person. He had a code of ethics that if you went to work for him, I think it started when you were in the assembly, got handed out to you. You are not the elected official. The relationship you as staff should have to community was like music to my ears because I was a community organizer. But that was, and I had to figure out how to be a bureaucrat and still be a community organizer. And the people that I met during Art's mayoralty, during the campaign, the re-election campaign, are still close to me because that's what happens when you have a healthy individual running for being the mayor, running for office. And one of the saddest parts was when he did not win. And he didn't win because people didn't understand what he was doing. And it got split from the left and split from the right, and he got squeezed in the middle. And it was a tragedy for San Francisco. I can't tell you how appreciative I am of the opportunity, Art, that you gave me, however many thousands of years ago when I was just a little whippersnapper. But the Mayor's Office of Community Development manages these federal funds and provides grants to organizations serving low-income communities all across San Francisco. I got to work in every neighborhood, on every issue. I learned how to be a grant maker. I learned how to manage the politics so you could actually have good policy. And then Art went on to become the regional administrator for HUD, which was the office most closely, we were actually more connected to HUD than we were to the mayor's office or to the city and county. And in one of the first meetings I went to with him in that capacity, my wife and I had just adopted a puppy, and Art spent the first half hour of the meeting telling me how, and describing and demonstrating how I needed to be alpha to my dog. So there's some things you just don't forget, but Art, I'm so happy that you're here. I know you knew Al a little bit, who was a dear friend of mine, and thank you for being here.
It's been a long time since I've done anything like this, so I'm taking a good look just to try to remember the excitement and the feeling of dealing with people. And tonight is a special night for me because I'm talking about one of my buddies who I admire and love. Not only as a human being, but as an extraordinary public official. Some people were asking me tonight, what have you been doing? And at 85, I say to them, anything I want to. Anything I want to. And I wanted to do this because it's so special. And Provost, I thank you for your support. I know there's a lot of things that happen at this university. I worked with Leo McCarthy, one of my mentors, to create the McCarthy Center years ago, and the university welcomed it and did an extraordinary job in creating and making this making it a very viable educational component to this university. This is even better because of what it means. And so I'm very proud and pleased to be here and salute the university, salute all of you for your extraordinary contributions that have made this work. And I want to remember Mel Swig, who I also knew and worked with closely about issues in San Francisco. He would love this because in 1977, I got to put my glasses on, that's an 85-year-old thing. This university became the first one in America to create the social justice and the Jewish and social justice educational system here in San Francisco, the program here in San Francisco, the first one in the country. And some people think elsewhere. And then in 2019, some 42 years later, USF again broke new ground with the establishment of the Rabbi Residence Program here in conjunction with the Swig Social Justice Program. First one, not only in America, but in the world. In the world, the first one. Extraordinary. Extraordinary. And knowing Pam and so many of you that I've had a chance to greet in the short time I've been here tonight, it feels like a homecoming for me, even though I've never been to this particular program. Mel would, as I say, be so proud of what is happening here and how we need it today in this fractious world. How we need it. Alvin Baum was not only a leader for Jews and gays, he was a leader for all of San Francisco and indeed the greater society that we all live here in the Bay Area. I met him shortly after I arrived in San Francisco and learned so much about him, not only about gay rights issues, which he talked about, but urban planning, social services, civil rights, politics. Mark always refers to him as a Renaissance man, and indeed he was. This memorial lecture series also honors Rabbi Camille Shira Angel, who was, as you've heard, so important, not only to Robert, but to Pam, and also Alvin himself, as well as Cheryl Lazar, as they went through their time with their illnesses. I had not met Rabbi Angel until tonight, as she said, but being a sharp politician, a little bit anyway, left, I checked last year's Instagram program to see who she was. And I fell in love with her like everybody else does. But I must confess, I want to be honest, she's not the only one I'm in love with here. Pam David is someone who, as you heard, came to work with me when I was mayor in the middle of my term. If she had come in the first year, I probably would have won that re-election. But she was special. She started as a special assistant and moved up and soon became one of the dominant policy advisors in my staff. She was a star almost from the beginning, and as you heard, a couple of other mayors quickly realized it when I left the mayor's office. And they kept her on to their advantage. And together with Robert, who I don't know that well, but certainly have come to know him as I've spent time with the people who are closest to him. And this dynamic man joined with Pam to be the spark plugs that have continued to promote Al's essence. In fact, he was described to me by people who know better, because they knew both of them together as a couple, as the yin to Al's yang, because they suited each other in the different ways that they interacted and made it work. Last year, as you heard, this series featured Dr. Marcy Alvin. You know how I know her? Mark introduced me. In 1998, when I was the Western Center Regional Director for HUD, I noticed that we didn't have any housing planned or working for elder gay folks who have a special set of circumstances when they age, especially this generation, which hasn't had the benefit of what is taught here and is talked about here, but had some of the old attitudes that didn't make it that comfortable. And so it was important that we create a place for elder gays. And Mark said, I got just the person. I called him up. He was on the Board of Supervisors then. And I called him up and I said, Mark, I'm all over this Western region, 5 states, and we have nothing for elder gays. He says, I got just the person for you. And he introduced me to Marcy and her late partner, wife, Jeanette Gurevich. And together we started, and it took a while. It took a while. But history was made. And if you want to see it, go down to 55 Laguna, and you'll see the best. Now, I'll have more to say about Mark when I speak to the broader audience. But I've been listening and hearing how important all of you are. So I'm going to, frankly, with the money that makes this go. And so I want to share with you the best religious story of my 40-year career. You're going to love it. So it starts this way. One of the challenges that I had as mayor was trying to be normal, because nobody treats you normally. Positive or negative, they don't treat you normally. And so we struggled to try to have moments of normalcy with our family. So for example, when you're the mayor, you always have bodyguards with you because of the tragic history in our city. So it messes up the sociology of the family. What I mean by that is normally when you go out, dad's driving, mom's on the passenger side, the kids are in the back, and if the kids start to act up or fuss, you can turn around and say, knock it off or you're going to get it when you go home. But you can't do that when there's a cop in the car driving, and the sociology is the cop drives, I'm in the passenger side with the communications equipment, and Sherry, my wife's in the back with the kids. So you can't really be normal. So every once in a while we tell a lie to the bodyguards, usually on a Sunday night, and say, we're not going out tonight. And they wouldn't have to come and watch us. So we'd sneak out with a normal way and go over to my mother's house for a Greek dinner on Sunday night. And then one night in February, 1990. We're coming back, and Sherry remembers that we don't have any milk for breakfast the next morning for the kids, who are about 8 and 4. So I said, well, take them upstairs to the house. I'll go get the milk. And I did. And I'm on my way back from one of the corner stores, and the phone, and then it was right, down here, it didn't have the cells that we have. And it's Sherry on the phone saying, Art, Mother Teresa's walking up the stairs to the house. Mother Teresa's walking up the stairs to the house. This is Sunday night at about 9 o'clock at night. And she's getting the kids ready for bed. So she says, what do I do? I said, well, are you serious? She says, yeah. She's got 2 nuns with her. Well, bring her in. Let her in the house. I'll be right there with the milk. So I got there a few minutes later, and there she is. Just like what's in all of your minds right now. Mother Teresa and 2 nuns on my couch. Hello, Mother. What brings you here? Now, she spoke good English, but had a very soft voice. So you really had to get close. And she says, I have come to talk to you about the work of God. All right, Mother, I'll sit down. Sherry's running upstairs to try to get the kids in their Sunday clothes to come down and meet her. They don't want to come. So she proceeded to tell me about a building on the corner of Turk and Fillmore that she had found with her nuns that were accompanying her, that she wanted to convert into a homeless facility. Her order already had several of them in the city. And it was abandoned, and nobody knew who owned it. So someone suggested it might be owned by the city. She said, well, where's the mayor live? I'll go ask him. And that's how she wound up at my house Sunday night at 9 o'clock. And I said, well, Mother, I think I know the building you're talking about. It's an old brick building. It's been abandoned. I think it's owned by the Public Utilities Commission, but I'll find out tomorrow morning and get right on it. She says, the work of God cannot wait until tomorrow morning. What do you have in mind, Mother? We must go now. Now? Mother, it's 10 o'clock at night. It's cold, it's dark, it's February. That neighborhood can be a little sketchy. She says, do not fear. God will protect us. So just to make sure God protected us, I called for my 2 bodyguards who were there in a flash. We used to have a red phone there. And they were there in a flash, and we left 2 of them, and we left one of them there because Sherry wanted to come with us. And so off we went, bodyguard, me, Mother Teresa, Sherry, and then the 2 nuns driving her car. Go down to the corner of Fillmore and Turk, and we're looking at this building. It's still there, and we're trying to figure it out. There's no sign. There's nothing that indicates it's a city-owned building. So we walked around the corner, around the side to the back, where there was a chain link fence with a hole in it. So we walked through the chain link fence and came to the back of the building, and there is a barrel with a fire in it with about 8 or 9 homeless guys sitting around trying to keep warm on this wintry night. They see us coming, and I said, hey guys, it's the mayor. What are you doing here? I said, well, I brought somebody famous to see you. They look, and they see her. It's Mother Teresa. What are you doing here? Now, keep in mind, folks, it's about 10:30, 11:15 at night in the Fillmore. And we said, well, we're trying to figure out who owns this building because Mother Teresa wants to create a homeless facility here. Well, the city owns it, but we've been living here for the last 5 years because it's been abandoned. So I turned to Mother Teresa. I said, well, there you go, Mother. It's owned by the city, and tomorrow morning I'll get right on it and see if we can't make this work. I'm just a little concerned about the seismic issues and all that kind of stuff, but we will make it work, either here or somewhere else. She says, thank you very much. We're heading back to the cars. And as we just about get ready, she's got her car, I've got my car. And she says, I say, Mother, can I ask you a question? She says, yes, what is it? I said, well, do you do this often? She says, what's that? I said, well, do you go to mayor's houses late on Sunday night and ask for buildings like this? She says, yes. I do it all the time. She knew who she was. She didn't flaunt it, but it just came out. So here we are in the Fillmore at 11 o'clock saying goodbye at the cars. And I said, do you do this often? And she says, yeah. And so I said, well, who was the last mayor you did it to? She thinks a moment. Remember, this is back in 1990. She thinks for a moment. She says, Mayor Koch in New York. Ed Koch was the mayor then. And she says, you know, he has a much nicer house than you do. Does anybody not know that Gracie Mansion is provided by the city of New York, right? And she had a little smile on her face. So I said, oh, you like to tease, huh? Just little smile. So I said, well, you know, Mother, I don't do these things for free, you know. She says, what do you mean? I said, well, I'm going to do you a favor with this building. You got to do me a favor. And she says, yes, what is it? She understood. Shoot, right back. So I said, well, Sherry's working on a First Lady project that will house, in those days, we didn't have a fentanyl epidemic, we had a crack cocaine epidemic, and we had a lot of women of color, especially, becoming addicted, pregnant, and giving birth to babies that were born sick from the first moment. And so we knew that if we could get the babies and the women off of drugs during pregnancy, they could give birth to a healthy baby. And so Sherry was raising, as a First Lady project, several $1 million in order to create this facility, which we were trying to put out in the Bayview where most of the epidemic was. And so I said, well, when the next time you come to San Francisco, Mother, I'd like to show you Sherry's First Lady project. And she says, and I described it to her, and she says, let's go now. Let's go now. It's 11:15, but she says, let's go now. So I called the hospital, San Francisco General, and I said, this is the mayor. I'm coming with Mother Teresa right now. You can imagine what happens at 11:30 at night at San Francisco General, and who's there? It ain't the high-priced personnel. It's the working class, mostly Latino, Latina, and a lot of ethnic people who are working that late shift. So we get there, and they're waiting, and we go up to the neonatal unit where Mother Teresa blesses about 13 babies who were in that nursery withdrawing from drugs at a day old. And she reached in there and left her relic that she gave to everyone and left it by their heads. And then we went down to the AIDS ward, and she left another relic and blessed each one of those guys with the same thing. And we started walking out, and the old San Francisco General Hospital had a large lobby about like this. And we're walking out, saying our goodbyes, and I happen to turn around, and there's about 100 people following us because of who she was. And so she turned and said this to them, and I've burned it in my memory, even though it was that long ago. She said, when you all die and go to heaven, God's going to be waiting for you. And thank you for what you're doing for these sick babies and these sick men. Because in taking care of them, you're taking care of his son, Jesus Christ. Those people bent down and just realized that for these difficult, thankless jobs, they were being told they're going to heaven by a future saint. It was truly magnificent. And a story that I've never forgotten that I think best captures the same kind of spirit that is happening right here. And so I thank you all for what you're doing and for the support you give and the university gives to this particular function that is a part of the SWIG program for Jewish and social justice. And I hope that it grows and grows the way Mother Teresa grew with her service and became a saint. Thank you very much.
Robert, do you want to say a word? Just a little. Really short. So we're just about to conclude and move over to the Marashi at the From Hall, and I invite you to, but let's hear, I told Robert, I asked Robert, he would say just a brief word.
It's going to be very brief. You know, I have to be honest with you, this year is much harder than last year was. And I realize why. I was talking to Mason about this, who, just a little sidestep, I had the honor of going to one of Camille's classes this year, and it's one that she had Mason Funk from Outwards as a lecturer, and it was fantastic. The enthusiasm the students brought, and also the wisdom and significant work that Mason brought. Just warmed my heart, and Camille made it happen. Camille also was really instrumental in getting Al's archives situated. And I'm very grateful to her for that, because he's got a place that honors who he was and what he did. The reason I said this year is harder is because I think last year, you know, I was in the midst of trying to deal with the estate. I was trying to get things sold. I was trying to get things positioned. This year, I've kind of just been sitting more with the loss of Al, you know, and you said that I brought a lot to him. I've got to tell you, he turned my life around. He made my life something magnificent. We had a magnificent life together. You know, there was some tension. We were very different, but we were also soulmates, and we were fantastic together. And I just have to say I'm extremely honored to be able to carry on his legacy, and it's with many of you. So I want to thank you all for being here. And I've got to tell you, Pam David has been my rock, and I love her dearly. Thank you all. Thank you, Mark.
Well, Robert, you and Pam and your friends and loved ones are changing lives one student at a time, one class at a time, one breaking bread luncheon and retreat at a time. And you'll have a chance to hear from some of their questions and meet them in just a few minutes. So the plan from here is to grab some fruit, grab some cheese, make sure you take a little food with you. There's still plenty of food. And the walk is maybe 5 minutes. You'll go and find From Hall. It's in the large room, the Marashi room. There's also a live stream link. If you have friends who couldn't make it tonight, it's not too late to send them the link so they can tune in. Hi, my sister in Chicago is watching us right now. So just so grateful to have this, and thank you for beginning what a special evening and occasion this is. See you over there. Robert, you'll like this. I have all my binding notes.